Long division. All right, let's get busy here. Now we're going this guy divided by this guy. And that is the same thing if I were to say 15 divided by 2. What you would do is you would take the 15, you'd put it in there, and you divide it by 2. You look to see what 15 divided by 2 is. You get 7. You would multiply the 7 times the 2, you get 14, and then you would subtract. So once I subtract, I get a remainder of 7, and I would say plus 1 over 2, because we're dividing by 2, or you just say 1/2. Let's write the first polynomial inside of our division house. We got 6x to the third power minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. We're going to divide this thing by x minus 2. Now, before I get started here, I'm showing you 2 ways to do it. I'm showing you a long division way, and then I'm going to show you everybody's favorite way, synthetic division. So, to do long division, we're going to look at the first term here and the first term here. We're going to kind of ignore the minus 2. The minus 2 is just going to go along for the ride. Okay, what is 6x to the third divided by x? That's going to be 6x squared. So this is what I was doing in my head. I was going 6x to the third power, and I was dividing that by x. That's how I got 6x squared. And then you're going to take 6x squared, and then you're going to distribute it to both the x and the negative 2. So we get 6x to the third minus 12x squared. And then we're going to subtract this thing. Now that's how you would write it if you want to show that you're going to subtract it. But I always find that students, even myself, will mess up with the negative numbers if we try to do it like this. Because you see, look at what this is saying right here. It's saying negative 19 minus negative 12. Subtracting a negative is not something our brains very simply do. Some of you guys can do it, but if you're like me, you mess up on that a lot. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to change the signs here and then add, which is the same thing. It's adding the opposite. So this would go to 0, so I don't need to write it. And then over here I go negative 19 plus 12, and that's going to give us 7, negative 7, x squared. And then I'm going to bring down the next term. The next term is 16x, so I'm going to say plus 16x. Now we're just going to repeat the process, do the same thing until we have nothing else to bring down. I'm looking at the first terms. We got negative 7x squared, and we're going to divide that by x. So we're going to do the same thing as we did before, negative 7x squared, but this is what I'm doing in my head. You don't have to write it out like this. And I divide it. I get negative 7x. And so now I multiply it out. I get negative 7x squared, and then I get positive 14x. I'm multiplying it times the x and then the negative 2. Then I'm going to subtract it. Remember, when we subtract, we just change the signs and then we add. So this adds to 0, so it goes away. We don't care about it. And then over here we get 2x. We bring down the negative 4. And now we look at the first terms yet again. 2x divided by x. And so that's 2x divided by x. That's what we're doing in our head. We get 2. So I put plus 2. I go 2 times x, which is 2x. 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. I change the signs. I add them together. And in this case, we get a 0, which is cool. Whenever we get a remainder 0, that means that this guy, x minus 2, is a factor of this. So if we were to factor this all the way, x minus 2 would be one of those factors. So this is our answer. All right, now let me show you the other way to do it. The other way is called synthetic division, and we can only do the other way when we have something like this, when we're dividing by a binomial. All right, check it out. First thing I do is I write all of the coefficients. So we have 6, and then we have negative 19, 16, and negative 4. Now this is the way I like to write it. I like to put a little, like, kind of, I don't know, birdhouse there. I don't know what you call that. And then inside that birdhouse thing, we're going to put the 0 for this factor. So what value of x would make this factor 0? And the answer is 2. Then I draw this line, and I always draw a little thing right there. And the reason why I draw that is because I want to remind myself that whatever number I get here, that's my remainder. All right, let me show you guys how to get all these numbers right here, because that's going to be our answer, and then I'll explain how you write out the answer. All right, the first thing we got to do is bring down this 6. So we bring down this 6, and then the next thing we got to do is we got to write a new number right here. That number we get by going 6 times 2. So 6 times 2 is 12, and when I add negative 19 to 12, I get negative, what would that be, 7? Yeah, negative 7. Then you got to do it again. You got to go negative 7 times 2, and then that's going to give us negative 14. Then I add these guys together, I get a 2. 2 times 2 is going to be 4. Then when I add those together, I get a 0. So 0 is my remainder. Now, whenever you do synthetic division, this is how you write it out. The very first number is always your remainder. The next number is your constant. The next number after that is your x term, and then you have an x squared term. If we had another number, then that number would be your x to the third term. You just continue counting up, like x to the third, the next one would be x to the fourth, so on and so forth. So, this is how you'd write it out. If you have a 0, you don't have to write it. 2 is your constant. It's a positive 2. The next one is negative 7x, and then we have 6x squared. This answer matches our other answer, and it seems a lot less to write and a lot faster to do.